Tonight, a significant meeting took place far from the tense borders of South Asia. Here in Washington, United States President Donald Trump hosted a private lunch at the White House. The guest was a very powerful figure, Pakistan's Army Chief, General Asim Munir. This meeting happened on June 18, 2025. It was a rare and important event. The discussions were held behind closed doors with no press allowed to attend. This level of direct engagement between a United States president and a Pakistani military leader is not a common occurrence. It signals that something important is happening in the relationship between the two countries, especially after a period of serious trouble. The timing of this meeting is everything. It comes just weeks after a dangerous conflict between India and Pakistan was brought to a halt. The two nations, both armed with nuclear weapons, had engaged in their most serious fighting in many years. The world watched nervously as the situation threatened to spiral out of control. General Munir's visit to Washington is seen as a direct result of that crisis. He is considered the de facto ruler of Pakistan, holding immense influence over the country's politics and foreign policy. His presence at the White House suggests a desire to strengthen ties with the United States, particularly in matters of security and diplomacy. This visit is part of a broader effort by General Munir to navigate a complex international landscape. He is on a 5-day trip to the United States, aiming to improve both military and economic connections. While Pakistan has been getting closer to China, it also sees value in a strong relationship with Washington. For the United States, engaging with Pakistan's most powerful leader is a strategic move. It is a way to maintain influence in a volatile region and to encourage stability. The private lunch with President Trump is the centerpiece of this effort, a clear symbol of renewed high-level dialogue between the two nations after a long period of strain. The importance of this meeting cannot be overstated. It represents a potential turning point for United States-Pakistan relations, which have been strained in the past over issues like terrorism. President Trump has been eager to take credit for calming the recent India-Pakistan tensions, and this meeting provides a platform for that narrative. For Pakistan, it is a chance to secure American support, both diplomatically and economically. It is also an opportunity to discuss the future of the region and Pakistan's role in it. The quiet nature of the meeting suggests that very serious and sensitive topics were on the table, away from the glare of public scrutiny. To understand why this meeting is so crucial, we must look back at the events of this spring. The region was pushed to the brink of a major war. The trouble began on April 22, 2025. A horrific terrorist attack took place in Pahalgam, a town in Indian-administered Kashmir. Militants opened fire on a group of tourists, killing at least 28 people. Most of the victims were Hindus. India quickly blamed the attack on the Resistance Front, or TRF, which it says is a group backed by Pakistan. This tragic event was the spark that lit a very dry fuse, setting off a chain reaction of anger and retaliation. India's response was swift and severe. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government took immediate action on multiple fronts. They suspended a long-standing water-sharing agreement with Pakistan, known as the Indus Water Treaty. They also revoked all short-term visas for Pakistani citizens who wanted to travel to India. Both countries pulled some of their diplomatic staff out of each other's capitals. Pakistan responded with similar measures. It closed its airspace to all Indian airlines, effectively cutting off a major travel route. These diplomatic and economic moves raised tensions to a boiling point, preparing the ground for military action. By early May, the situation had escalated from a diplomatic crisis to a military one. On May 7th, the Indian military launched what it called a counter-terrorism operation. This led to direct clashes across the border. For several days, from May 7th to May 10th, both sides exchanged heavy fire. They used artillery, missiles, and drones to attack each other. The fighting was not limited to the disputed line of control in Kashmir. It also spread to the international border in the Punjab region. Military bases and airfields were targeted, causing dozens of casualties and forcing mass evacuations of civilians living near the border. The world watched in fear as the two nuclear-armed neighbors engaged in this dangerous conflict. Each strike was met with a counter-strike, and the rhetoric from both governments became increasingly hostile. There were near-daily warnings of further escalation. The fear was that a miscalculation or a further attack could lead to an all-out war, with devastating consequences that would be felt far beyond the region. It was a stark reminder of how fragile the peace is in South Asia. This intense period of fighting set the stage for international intervention, as global powers grew alarmed by the potential for a catastrophic outcome. As the fighting raged, international efforts to stop the conflict went into high gear. The United States in particular became actively involved. United States officials engaged in what is known as back-channel diplomacy. This means they held quiet talks with leaders from both India and Pakistan, away from the public eye. United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Vice President J.D. Vance were at the center of these efforts. They spoke with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, and the powerful Pakistani Army Chief, General Asim Munir. These intense negotiations aimed to pull both sides back from the brink. On May 10th, a ceasefire was finally announced. The fighting stopped, and airports and airspace were reopened. President Donald Trump was quick to claim credit for this breakthrough. He stated publicly that United States mediation played a key role in ending the conflict. According to the American view, it was United States pressure and diplomacy that convinced India and Pakistan to lay down their arms. The United States administration presented the ceasefire as a major foreign policy success. They argued that their intervention was essential in preventing a wider war and pushing the two countries toward dialogue instead of continued military confrontation. However, India has a very different version of events. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi firmly rejected the idea of United States mediation. During a phone call with President Trump on the sidelines of the G7 summit, Modi made his position clear. He stated that the ceasefire was the result of direct talks between the Indian and Pakistani militaries, with no third party involved. Indian officials have stressed that their country has a long-standing policy of not accepting outside mediation in its disputes with Pakistan. They insist that the Indian military initiated the communication that led to the ceasefire, and Pakistan responded to it directly. This leaves us with two competing narratives. Pakistan has publicly expressed its appreciation for Washington's diplomatic role, which supports the American account. They see the United States as a helpful partner in de-escalating the crisis, but India strongly refutes this, portraying the ceasefire as a bilateral achievement. This disagreement highlights the complex and often sensitive nature of diplomacy in the region. Whether the United States played a decisive role or simply a supportive one, the result was a halt to the dangerous fighting. But the different stories about how it was achieved show the deep-seated mistrust that still exists between all parties involved. Looking ahead, India and Pakistan have different ideas about what should happen next. India's main focus is on stopping cross-border terrorism. Prime Minister Modi has been very clear about this. He told President Trump about India's ongoing counter-terrorism mission called Operation Sindoor. For India, there can be no meaningful peace talks until it is satisfied that Pakistan is taking real action to stop militant groups from operating on its soil. India wants to see a permanent end to attacks like the one in Kashmir. Until that happens, India will continue to prioritize its security and will be hesitant to engage in broad diplomatic talks. Pakistan, on the other hand, wants to move towards a broader dialogue. While it is also focused on security, Pakistani leaders have expressed a desire to discuss all outstanding issues with India. This includes the core dispute over Kashmir, as well as trade and other matters. The recent ceasefire announcement included a pledge for both sides to begin talks on a broad set of issues at a neutral location. This is the future Pakistan hopes for. General Munir's visit to Washington is partly about getting U.S. support for this kind of dialogue. Pakistan believes that talking is the only way to achieve lasting peace and stability in the region. The United States also has a vision for the region's future. President Trump has suggested that India and Pakistan should focus more on trade and economic cooperation. The American perspective is that if the two countries become more economically linked, they will have less reason to fight. The U.S. wants to see a stable South Asia where it can maintain its influence and counter the growing power of China. By engaging with both sides, Washington hopes to act as a stabilizing force. It wants to prevent future crises and gently guide the two rivals towards a more peaceful and prosperous relationship, which would serve American interests. These competing visions create a complicated path forward. India's demand for an end to terrorism before talks can begin is a major hurdle. Pakistan's desire for comprehensive dialogue, including on the sensitive issue of Kashmir, is something India is reluctant to agree to. Meanwhile, the U.S. is trying to find common ground, but its influence is limited by the deep-seated historical mistrust between the two nations. The future of the region depends on whether these different goals can be reconciled. Finding a way to build trust and start a meaningful conversation remains the biggest challenge for all sides involved in this long-running conflict. The ceasefire that took hold in May has brought a pause, but it has not brought a lasting peace. The situation along the border remains extremely fragile. Even after the main fighting stopped, there have been reports of isolated artillery fire and other ceasefire violations. The deep-rooted issues that caused the conflict have not been resolved. The terrorist attack in Kashmir, the military retaliation and the diplomatic fallout have left scars. The risk of another escalation is always present. A single incident could easily shatter the current calm and plunge the region back into crisis, which is why the international community remains on high alert. Peace between India and Pakistan is incredibly important for the entire world. Both nations are nuclear powers, and the thought of a war between them is terrifying. A major conflict would cause immense human suffering and economic devastation in the region. The consequences would also be felt globally, disrupting trade, creating a refugee crisis, and raising the specter of nuclear use. For these reasons, stability in South Asia is a top priority for global powers like the United States and China. The world cannot afford to ignore the tensions between these two countries. Their conflict is not just a local dispute, it is a matter of international security. So what might happen next? The meeting between President Trump and General Munir is a key event to watch. It could lead to stronger U.S.-Pakistan ties and increased American involvement in the region. However, Pakistan is also deepening its alliance with China, which plans to sell it advanced stealth fighter jets. This complex balancing act will shape the future. The promised talks between India and Pakistan, if they happen, will be another critical development. The location, timing, and agenda of these talks will be very telling. Any progress would be a positive sign, but a breakdown could quickly lead to renewed hostility. Everyone should pay close attention to these events in the coming months. The relationship between India and Pakistan is at a delicate crossroads. The path toward peace requires building trust, which is currently in very short supply. The actions of leaders in New Delhi, Islamabad, Washington, and Beijing will all play a part in determining what happens next. The ceasefire has provided a window of opportunity. Whether that window is used to build a more stable future or is simply a brief pause before the next storm is the question that now hangs over South Asia and the world.